Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, Bill Cannon, retired 27-year veteran of the NYPD, Sergeant. And with me today, straight out of Brooklyn, retired NYPD detective, Phil Grimaldi. How you doing today, Phil?
I'm doing pretty good, Billy. I'm looking forward to digging into this case and hearing our new intro. I'm very excited about that.
I'm going to introduce the show shortly after this, but one of the things is obviously there was some developments yesterday, sad developments, and we're going to get into that right after we play our introduction. There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped in 10th and Ranch, Michael Byler.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Welcome back, folks. Pretty good intro. So the Naomi Irion case, obviously there was some developments. Yesterday, the perp who was arrested, Troy Driver, who happens to be a career criminal, the judge offered him $750,000 bail. And although that sounds like a lot of money, you only have to pay 15% of it. So anyone that owns a home or has any kind of assets, or if his family does, they could put that up. So it would only come to about $112,000, which I think infuriated the public that someone charged with a kidnapping is even considered for bail. I think it's just outrageous anywhere in this country. This is where we're at in criminal justice reform. And the other side would argue that bail is just to ensure that the defendant shows up for his next court appearance. But how about the public? How about the danger you're putting the public in? And in regards to the victim of this crime, how about her family letting the guy who kidnapped her out on bail? Just, to me, just outrageous. The second part of this yesterday was late last night. Horrendously, they discovered the body of Naomi Irion, an 18-year-old girl. This case is as bad as it gets. And they discovered it about a mile away from where she was abducted in that Walmart parking lot. So all of these developments are just, horrendous. And then many people are asking in the chat, well, are they going to revisit the bond or the bail? I certainly hope so. I certainly hope that the judge will say, no, that there is no bond now. He's remanded, which he should have been remanded on the kidnapping. Just outrageous. So let's just recap this. On March 12th, Naomi Irion went to this Walmart parking lot. That's where she parks her car at about 5:25 in the morning. And she gets picked up by a shuttle that takes her to her job. She works for Panasonic. However, this day at about approximately 5:30 in the morning, a man approaches her. And whatever his actions were, he went to the driver's side, and whatever he did, whether it was something he said or maybe he displayed a knife or a gun, he's seen entering the car and pushing her over to the passenger seat. And that is the last time she's ever seen. And she was abducted. On the 15th of March, her car is recovered approximately a mile away from the Walmart. It was found because the law enforcement pinged her cell phone, and they were able to find her car. And I'm sure there are many, many other investigative developments that we, being content creators on YouTube, are not privy to and do not know. And one of them was they received a call. Whenever you have a major case, a kidnapping, a murder, you have a tips phone line. And they got a tip as to where the body was, and they recovered the body in a shallow grave yesterday, and it was brought to the medical examiner's office, and sure enough, it was positively identified as Naomi Irion. Phil, it doesn't get any worse than this. I was trying to give a brief synopsis on this, and we're going to get into the case as to what needs to be done next. But your thoughts?
Well, first off, I just want to address the bail that you spoke about. Now, prior to the whole defund the police and the whole bail reform in New York, but I'm going to talk about Brooklyn because that's what I know about. A lot of times in murder cases, if it was a strong case, judge would order a remand to jail pending the next hearing. Now, in this case, they were fairly certain that this, and I'm going to use this language, scumbag had abducted this young lady. There was evidence found in her vehicle that indicated suspicious activity, possibly violence. That was actually a statement from her mom, Diane. So I think that the $750,000 bail sounds like a lot of money. Like you said, it's only 15% needed to release this animal. When you have a person that abducted a young 18-year-old girl off the street at 5:30 in the morning, a young lady on her way to work, I think that poses a tremendous threat and danger to the community at large. So I think that a remand was what was probably proper in this case. However, they came up with that bail. I would think now that the body has been recovered, district attorney's office, prosecutor in Nevada is probably going to revisit up the charges, and hopefully there will be a remand in place. I believe that there was some type of monitoring device that was applied to him, so I don't think it'll be too hard to locate him. And this animal belongs behind bars. And let's hope, he was involved in another murder, as we're going to report, we're going to talk about years back, 20-something years ago. And it's obvious, he didn't change his ways. He was involved in Met. So he's there's only one place for this animal. It's behind bars. And let's hope and pray that he never sees the light of day again.
Yeah, he has a criminal history. In 1997 in California, he was involved in methadone, and they lured this guy to his house. Him and his buddy were there with his girlfriend. His girlfriend shot and killed the guy. Him and his buddy took the guy's body and dumped it. I love people in the chat say, "Oh, he didn't pull the trigger." To me, there's something called acting in concert. If you act in concert with a crime, in my mind, you're just as guilty as the person that pulled the trigger. You're facilitating the crime. You're involved in it. You planned it. Now you get rid of the body. And even after that, he had been, when he was sentenced to 15 years, he had a bunch of armed stick-ups that he did, was just included in the sentence for this murder. And he had also done a burglary of a gun store. So this guy, and at 15, he pointed a loaded gun at another kid. And so he's got a real bad past. I want to play a little bit of Brian Enton from News Nation, who's been on this case from the beginning. And I really like Brian Enton.
Can I just make one quick point?
Go ahead.
He was involved in the string of robberies, like you said. He was 17 years old at the time he was sentenced for the murder, being complicit as an accessory to that murder you just spoke of, where his girlfriend, they lured a drug dealer to the house. She shot and killed him. Him and his friend disposed of the body. Now, the point that I wanted to make is this. He was 17 years old. He did that time in jail. He obviously was not reformed, and there's only one place for this guy. It's behind bars.
Absolutely.
This really is just heartbreaking, Rudabeh. This all happened within the last hour. What we've learned from the Churchill County Sheriff's Office is that yesterday they followed up on what they called an investigative tip that took them out to a very, very rural part of the county. They found a gravesite. They found a body. It was taken to the medical examiner's office, and today they were able to officially identify the body as Naomi's. You remember, we've been covering the story all week. She is an 18-year-old woman. She is the daughter of a U.S. diplomat. She lived all over the world and recently moved here to Nevada to live with her older brother because she wanted a more normal life. She was used to living on these American diplomatic compounds. She wanted to go to college. She wanted to buy a car. She wanted to have a boyfriend. And she was in the Walmart parking lot back on March 12th when she was kidnapped. There has been hope all along that she could possibly be found alive. But again, now this really is tragic news just within the last hour that her remains have been discovered.
And you were there actually today reporting on Troy Driver, who's the suspect in her kidnapping. The bail for him was set at $750,000. Do you think that could be now raised now that the body has been found?
Well, that's a good question, Rudabeh, and we're going to wait and see about that tomorrow. There's so much such a strange situation surrounding this man, Troy Driver. He's been charged with kidnapping. He is apparently not talking to police. He has not been charged with murder, but he has been tied to the kidnapping. You mentioned the $750,000 bond that a judge ruled on today. Here in Nevada, you only have to pay 15% of that, so it's about $112,000. People are concerned he has the money and he could bond out, which would really be something if after they discover the body, he then bonds out of jail tomorrow. So everyone in this community really anxious right now, waiting to see if additional charges are added.
You know, just so horrendous when you see the face of that young woman, so much hope and so much love in her face. And, you know, she wanted to, she lived with her father and mother, who her father's a diplomat. So she traveled all over the world. And she wanted a more normal life of just living in one place, getting a job, owning a car, getting a boyfriend, living a normal life of like what a teenager lives. And to have someone steal her life from her is just, to me, it reminds me of every reason I ever became a cop, to go after, you know, you see this guy, Troy Driver, on the scene. And when you look at the video, he seems like almost like a predator. He's patrolling that Walmart parking lot and looking for a victim with his hoodie up. And it's really quite sickening to see this career criminal, you know, out there just searching for a victim. And it's disgusting. And then when you see the criminal justice system, i.e. the judge, respond with considering bailing this guy, is beyond. How did we get here? How did we get here where a judge thinks it's okay to release a kidnapper that potentially murdered this girl and probably did murder this girl? And they didn't, of course, have the body early yesterday when she issued this bond. But where did she get that from? Where are we as a society that we want to put the rights of a career criminal, a kidnapper, over someone who was murdered, kidnapped and murdered? Just, I don't know. It really makes me sick. It really does, you know.
Billy, I got to tell you, you could see the evil in his eyes in that last picture you had up of him. And he looks and reminds me somewhat of Charles Manson. I mean, look at that picture. You could see the evil in his eyes. But I want to talk a little bit about that morning. She came into the parking lot at about 5:09 a.m. in the Fernley Walmart parking lot. Obviously, she was there to wait for a shuttle to work, as you said earlier, the Panasonic location where she worked. And it said that she was active on social media until 5:23 a.m. And then at 5:24 a.m., that's when he approaches the car and enters through the driver's side. And then at 5:25, the vehicle leaves the parking lot. Now, I just want to make a point. I would never blame the victim, but it seemed like maybe she was paying attention to her cell phone. It was dark out. She didn't take notice of this, like you called him. He was prowling around the area, this predator that was looking for his prey. He was patrolling with his hood up, like you said, and she may not have noticed him. I just think that I have young daughters, and actually one of them is the same age as this young lady, and I just try to always tell them to be aware of your surroundings, keep an eye out. Had she, you know, been in the with the car running, the driver's seat with the doors locked, this guy approached, she possibly could have gotten away. But I think he took her totally by surprise. And that's what most predators do. They use the element of surprise, whether it be a robbery, a rape, a kidnapping. They always use the element of surprise. He had the fact that it was dark out on his side, so he's not so noticeable. You know, in a dark environment, you may not notice someone lurking around. So again, very shortly thereafter, they leave the parking lot. We believe that this horrible, heinous crime took place. And then they found the vehicle 3 days later. And in the vehicle, there was probably some evidence. The mother made a statement that there was suspicious activity, possibly violence, that she made a remark about. We don't have the inside details. We don't have the case folder in front of us. But I'm sure that when they did a physical examination of that car, an evidentiary examination, there was probably things recovered from within that car that led to the charges. If you read the charges on the affidavit that he was charged with prior to the body being found, it sounded certain that they believed that sexual acts had taken place, violence, and murder. So there was probably things in that car that led them to come to those conclusions. Again, you could never be too careful. You need to know what your surroundings are, especially at that time of the morning. This is when predators will be lurking in the dark. So,
Phil, I just want to save some of that for later. We're going to go over the evidence and what the police are going to be doing
sure.
in regards to connecting Troy Driver to this murder, this kidnapping murder. We'll talk about that in a little bit. What I want to talk about for at least a minute or so is Naomi Driver and the innocent. Many people that are, I think a lot of parents like for their kids to grow up slow and not to give them all the dirt and the horrors of this world because they want them to be secure and not be afraid. And that's good. But yet in the realities of this world, you somewhat have to teach your kids about the bad realities of this thing. And the mom of Naomi was interviewed by Brian Enton, and he asked her, was she the type of person that would fight back? And the mom said right away, no. She was she was almost like a little kid.
Very
18 years
innocent,
old.
obviously. Yeah.
Very innocent, but she wouldn't fight back. She didn't understand that. And as much as that breaks my heart, to think that there's this little fawn, to compare it to a little fawn, and that she didn't. And here's this predator, a wolf out there going after someone who is helpless. And this is the world we live in. There are these predators out there, and society now is more concerned with their rights than the rights of this beautiful young girl who never got a chance to really live her life because she's only 18 years old,
Sure.
and now she lost her life because of this savage, that took her life from her, kidnapped her, and then removes her from the scene in her own car. And just to think about this and think about the family and how they have to forever, closure. Is it closure? Yeah, they recovered her body. Closure? No, closure would have been finding her alive and having her be able to go about her life. But now she's dead, And then to think that this guy, we see the picture on the screen, the judge is worrying about him getting bailed. Whereas again, where are we as a society that's what we're worrying about? Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. We're taking a dive into this case. The first day we reported on this case, and a lot of happenings since it first occurred. If you like this podcast, please go on our YouTube, hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell. If you want to contribute to us, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels, and you want to join our YouTube family, you can go on our YouTube, join the people in the green font in the chat, part of our YouTube family. And we always are looking for and appreciate more members to our YouTube family. We really appreciate you guys who support us, our channel members. Infamous Truth Teller, good to see you. She was oblivious. This is Infamous Truth Teller. She was oblivious about the ugliness of this world. She was so beautiful. I happen to agree with you. You're 100% right. This girl was always surrounded by Marines and consulate security. She had no chance in the real world. I feel badly that her brother had to keep on her about locking the doors of her car. I heard that, right? She didn't understand why you had to lock the doors of your car, Moonlight View, Everlasting Sorrow, 100%. Betty Smith, Hoppy, good to see all you guys.
Billy, this was
Karen
such a sad case, and I was going to make that point that Real Robo just brought up. She came from a world of living in a diplomatic security situation. Her father was a diplomat, so she probably was never exposed to anything. There was always a wall of security around her. And when she went out into the real world, she was probably a very trusting, innocent young girl. And like you just said, the brother was was, getting on her about locking doors and stuff like that. And unfortunately, it was like the perfect storm for her to be preyed upon by this animal, by this savage. And it's really sad. It's just a sad case.
Yeah, and we're going to have to get into now how law enforcement uh, proceeded with this case. And of course, any case like this, you always ask for the help of the community because millions of eyes are better than a couple of eyes that you have in law enforcement. But you have the public out there, and you ask for their help. And they established a tip line, which you do in all major investigations, where you request the help of the community. And sure enough, they got a tip last night or yesterday afternoon, and they were able to find a body that was determined to be Naomi's body. And that was brought to the medical examiner's office, and it was positively identified. I mean, the facts in this case where she was kidnapped on March 12th, you'd need a real miracle to think that she was going to be found alive on the 30th of March. Just a total. Can miracles happen? Yes, they can. In this case, did it? No, it didn't. And I think everyone else in this world is a lesser person because Naomi Irion lost her life to this savage, and it's just, I sometimes don't like to use those words, but there's no other word to describe this guy than what he is. He's a savage, and people like that don't belong walking on the face of this earth. They belong in a prison cell for the rest of their life. And anyone that talks about decarceral policies, not putting people in prison, but giving them sanctions and programs. And no, this guy needs a program, and it's called a jail cell, and he needs it for the rest of his life.
Billy, one of the breaks that came in this case, now obviously they had the video surveillance of him getting in the car. They knew there was an abduction. They found the car within 3 days, but the law enforcement agency put out pictures of the vehicle, and a break came in the case after those pictures were broadcast on the news, and they were able to ID the occupant of the car, which was this savage that we talked about. His name is Troy Driver. So I think that was very helpful in the case. The fact, like you said, we went to the public, or not we, the law enforcement went to the public. They put out the pictures of him in the hoodie around by the Walmart. They put out the pictures of the vehicle. They were able to ID him. Now, they probably discovered a lot of evidence in her vehicle. Then they were able to impound his vehicle. There may have been some more evidence there. And then now we have a suspect. We have a person of interest, whatever you want to call it, and they can look into cell phone records. They were probably already up on her cell phone records, other video surveillance. Now you have his stuff, and they were able to charge him with the kidnapping and with the intent of committing a sexual act. That's what the affidavit said, as well as murder. Now, again, a tip led to the discovery of a shallow grave that was she was positively identified. And again, that's a third crime scene now that more evidence could be recovered. So I think law enforcement followed the trail just the way they should have. They enlisted the help of the public. It was unfortunate that this young lady was probably already deceased by the time law enforcement even became involved in the investigation, but they were able to put together all the pieces of the puzzle, and I'm sure it's going to continue from here. The investigation's definitely not over, and we'll talk about all of the things, all the steps that they took, and all of the evidentiary process that took place already, and what could be happening going forward.
Patty Banks, thank you so much for the 199 super chat. This is Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. And the case, of course, is the Naomi Irion case. I want to play a little bit of her brother and her mom being interviewed by Brian Enton, and just to see what genuinely good people they are.
On Monday.
And so I started going on social media and asking, has anybody heard from Naomi? When was the last time you were Snapchatting or anything with her? And then I heard back from a few kids that they're like, it was last time was early Saturday morning. And then I sent her other messages and she never opened them. I thought she just left me on read because I don't know why. I was like, what? Wait. She always opens her messages. Always.
So Monday comes around. I go to work like normal. That's actually the last time I was at work. Was Monday the 14th. And Hervé, our father, he looked at, because he has access to Naomi's bank account. So he looked at that, and there had been zero activity since 5 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. And she had stopped at a gas station around here that was on her way to work, buying some snacks, energy drinks, whatever she wanted, and going on to the Walmart parking lot, presumably, right? So we could confirm that that happened. We reached out to Panasonic HR, and they were able to call me as her emergency contact and let me know that she was no call, no show Saturday and Sunday. We got to Walmart around 7:30. They were busy. Maybe about 8:30, we got Walmart security to help us look on their footage from that day. And first thing that I saw, which was a little relieving to me, was seeing her car arrive at the area that she usually parks at, and sitting there. And then all of a sudden, and I mean, it's low resolution, it's from a distance, everything like that, not zoomed in or anything, and all you can see is like at first all we saw was like a little bit of movement, and then the car drives away. And so we didn't know what happened, so we were able to kind of zoom in and look at it. And then we saw this man approach from behind the car, open the driver door, which, based on conversations that I've had with Naomi, was probably unlocked, and say or do something to her to make her move over, and cool as a cucumber, drive the car away. No fast accelerations, no fast stopping, anything like that.
Just totally heartbreaking to the family. Folks in the chat, a lot of people are talking about should you carry a weapon with you? And I'm one of those cops that will tell you, yes, you should. I think you'll have a lot of cops say, oh, no, it could be used against you. Listen, don't be a victim. If you're more comfortable carrying a weapon with you, you do so, And I hate when cops will say, if you ever had a gun pulled on you or a knife pulled on you, there's nothing better than having your own gun, and
Absolutely.
and all of a sudden it comes out, and the perp, especially if there's a knife, the perp realizes he brought a knife to a gunfight, and all of a sudden he wilts like a little clam that he is. Road to Freedom, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. Please don't be afraid to make noise if you feel uncomfortable around someone. I've embarrassed more friends, family than they would have liked. Something? If you're in danger, you do whatever you have to do to survive. And in no way do I want to do anything, any victim blaming here whatsoever. This was a sweet, sweet girl who lost her life as a victim of a horrendous crime. But you have to realize there are bad people out there. There are predators out there. And you have to be ready in the event that something like this happens to you. It's just a horrendous thing. And, as I said, we have to be ready, especially when we have the criminal justice system these days taking the part of the criminal. Apparently, they're saying, someone in the chat said that the body was not recovered last night. It was the day before.
Yeah.
The family knew about it in court. It was, however, announced to the public last night. So we didn't, in fact, know about that. If the family knew about that during the court proceedings, how much more horrendous was it that this judge was considering bail? If they knew this, I mean, just incomprehensible that bail was even on the table.
Why not just remand and see if the body turns out to be identified as this young lady, which it sounds like that they had, a pretty good idea that it was her, and just remand this animal until they can, have another bail hearing in a few days. If it turns out it wasn't this young lady, and there's still a possibility that she wasn't dead or wasn't killed, then you could revisit the bail. But a simple remand would have satisfied everybody, in my opinion. And there's too much of a focus on the perpetrators instead of the victims. We need to focus on victims in cases like this. When there are victims, like an innocent 18-year-old girl that has been kidnapped and probably murdered, that person needs to be held until they can figure out what happened to her, or what her whereabouts are, and you remand them. And like I said, before the last few years of all this decarceration and defund the police and bail reform, in most murder cases where there was a strong case put before a judge in the district attorney's office would make the plea for a remand, and most of the times it was granted. I mean, especially there's probably no more horrendous case than this. A young lady on her way to work is kidnapped off the street and murdered. And how could you even make an argument that someone like that should be free to walk the streets? And especially with a long criminal history, did 20 years in jail for another murder, obviously not reformed. So I mean, the argument is there for the remand, and we really have to take a second look at what's going on in the country, the policies. I mean, it's really getting crazy out there. And should this animal have even been on the street to begin with his long criminal history? That's another conversation that we should be having.
Yeah, I want to get toward now we're all concerned, of course, about the case the police are building against him. And some of the evidence, of course, we're going to talk about is really strong, very, very strong evidence, of course, which set this whole ball in motion, was the Walmart video of this predator. Even though it's probably not good enough to identify his face, the Walmart video, he's seen coming from the rear of the car. This is according to the brother who watched the video, my brother Casey. And he approached the driver's side, and to his chagrin, his sister Naomi apparently never locked the doors of her car. And again, I don't want to blame her for that, but he was able to open the door of the car, whether he said something, whether he pulled a knife or a gun. She slid over to the other side. And, once a stranger is in your car, everything that's going to happen next is bad. There is no good outcome to that, So one of the things we talk about evidentiary wise is there's a very, very good chance that his DNA or his hair, his fibers, something is inside Naomi's car. Very, very strong evidence. We talk about Locard's theory of exchange. When a body has contact with something, it leaves something from the body there, whether it's a hair fiber, whether it's DNA, saliva, anything. Things fall off your head all the time and you don't even realize it. And a good crime scene technician can collect the evidence from that car, and that will tie him into at least being in her car. He has no reason, no right, no permission or authority to be in her car. And there's a solid cell phones. We talk about cell phones all the time, and the treasure trove of information and evidentiary material you pick up off of a cell phone. And just the fact that they found Naomi's car through pinging her cell phone gives some evidence of that right there. The perp, Troy, his cell phone, that's going to show everywhere he was. It's going to show that he was in her car, that it dropped off at a certain area, and it's probably going to show that he was near where the body was dumped. So all those things are extremely, extremely strong pieces of evidence that will hopefully build a case that'll put this guy away for the rest of his life. Phil, you want to continue with some of the evidence?
Yeah, listen, obviously the electronic evidence that you're speaking about, it obviously, based on the interview that we just saw from the mom, it gave us an insight onto her movements of that morning. So it showed, obviously the video surveillance showed that she comes into the parking lot. Then we look at her cell phone, and she's active on social media from 5:09, I believe it was, until 5:23. 5:24, he enters the car. 5:25, the car leaves the area. We also have that picture right there is the evidence from a gas station that she stopped at before she went to the parking lot. So we actually have all of her specific movements during the morning of the incident where she was abducted. And then if you follow video cameras and you follow the pinging of the cell phone, it leads you to the location where her vehicle was found. Now, once they zeroed in on a suspect, they can now go to video surveillance in and around his home, and maybe you'll have video of him leaving and you can track his movements. And then you can have his movements when he goes back. Again, like you just mentioned, his cell phone can also track his movements. So there's going to be a whole roadmap on movements between video surveillance and cell phone technology of both of the individuals, of the perpetrator Troy and this young lady. So we're going to have the movements of both. Now, again, once we get into the vehicle, her vehicle, like you said, Locard's theory of exchange, we have, you lose hundreds or even thousands of pieces of hair, fall off your body, things, touch DNA, all these different things happen. So if there was an extended period of time that he was in that vehicle, and I'm not talking hours, I'm talking about minutes. He didn't just jump in and jump out. Even then you could, you can leave some DNA or you could leave hair. But if there was some type of a struggle or some things went on inside that vehicle, something of him is going to be found inside that vehicle. Then you'll have evidence of whatever took place. They talked about violence. The mother made a mention of there was a violent some type of violence was presumed because of the evidence that was in the vehicle. So maybe there was some DNA, blood, whatever. I don't want to get too graphic on that. And then you have his vehicle, which was identified. Now, we don't know what was found in that vehicle, So there's going to be examination of all of these things. If you take a vacuum and you soak up fibers with the vacuum from her vehicle, you may find his hair or his DNA, some way, some shape, some form. So these are all the things that are done in crime scene. Now you're linking him not only by video surveillance where someone could say, all right, it looks like him, but if you have a piece of hair or a droplet of blood or a droplet of semen or a droplet of any kind of body fluid or touch DNA inside that vehicle, that locks him in. He was in that vehicle.
Let's play a little bit of this. We'll see how he was stalking.
Abducted from a Walmart parking lot has ended with the discovery of her body. Police say detectives acting on a tip found the remains of 18-year-old Naomi Irion buried in a remote area of Churchill County. The teenager was abducted in her own car while waiting for a shuttle bus on her way to work in Reno. A 41-year-old ex-con was charged today with first-degree kidnapping. Troy Driver has a violent criminal record, including a sentence of 15 years in prison for his role in a 1997 murder in North.
So you could see how he was stalking her. One of the things, Phil, and you covered a lot of the evidentiary stuff pretty well, is that the first thing I would do was when I locked this guy up is I would make him take his shirt off and make him strip down. I would photograph his body because potentially there's going to be wounds on his body because I'm sure she fought back. And he probably, of course, cleaned himself up, but you can't necessarily clean wounds or just explain how you got certain wounds. And if they're consistent with like you attacking someone and defensive wounds from the person you're attacking on your body or the person trying to defend themselves, that's super, super strong evidence. So I would definitely photograph his entire body, and that it can be such powerful evidence when if and when the case goes to trial. And of course, we're talking, and you mentioned that hair and fiber evidence, so important inside her car. We also want to look at his he had a pickup truck, I believe, that they invoiced. Again, Locard's theory of exchange, transfer evidence. There could be transfer evidence inside his pickup truck that came from the attack. And there's no doubt there was an attack here. This is believed to be his pickup truck. So they'll go over that. They'll invoice that. They'll impound that. They'll go over that with a fine-tooth comb. And any evidence transfer evidence that they can compare. If anything of her DNA is in his truck, obviously that is slam dunk evidence at a trial for this guy, because obviously he's going to take it to trial because he's not talking and he's going to fight this case. He didn't do it according to him. Results of canvases, so important. When a case like this happens, the police, the FBI, they go throughout the neighborhood and they talk to everyone. They talk on routes that vehicles can travel. They talk to people in Walmart. They talk to the other employees at the company that this guy Troy worked at. And believe it or not, they'll come up with some very good information when they do that. And so that's so important. Tips, of course, in this instance, a tip led to the location of her body. All of these are tried and true law enforcement methods that go with every major case. Of course, I don't want to get too graphic, but the body of Naomi Irion is a crime scene in itself. All right. And it was recovered and an autopsy is conducted. That would include, scraping under her fingernails, DNA, wounds, all type of things like that. As I said, I hate to get graphic with this because this young lady deserves to be treated with nothing but respect. But this is part of the investigation. They will also do toxicology. That's just and of course they would do a rape kit, which is in any case like this to recover semen, hair, and pubic hair fibers, that type of thing. And this is all part of a major investigation like this. Additional video. Where did these cars travel? Even easy passes. Let's see where this guy went after this occurred. All of these are tremendous, tremendous investigative value. And when we talk about in an investigation crossing T's and dotting I's, all of these things should be included in the investigation. Phil, anything else?
Yes, I think you made a great point about examining his body. If there was a bite mark on his body from her, that would obviously be very powerful evidence. But there's something else. If you look at the video outside the Walmart, there's the gray hoodie, the jeans, and whatever footwear he was wearing. I would get a search warrant, go through his belongings, and I would try to find those specific articles of clothing. If they are still in existence, we would be able to do physical examination to see if there's blood, fibers, semen, anything like that on that clothing. Also, it would just say more circumstantial evidence that, look, we found the exact clothing of the person that was lurking and forced his way into her vehicle in his home. So, you can build with obvious the DNA evidence and all the other evidence, but you also could have circumstantial evidence. If the clothing is recovered and let's say it's been washed already, there's no physical evidence on it, but you still have the exact type of jacket, hoodie, and you have the exact type of jeans and the footwear, and you can say this is circumstantial evidence, but you can tie it to this perpetrator. So again, you want to build a stronger case as you can with all the other evidence that you talked about, Billy. Obviously, plate readers, surveillance cameras, traffic cameras, all of those things should be looked at, and you can get a roadmap of the movements before and after the crime. That would be circumstantial evidence. This guy cannot say, if we have pictures of his vehicle and we have video surveillance and we have traffic cameras, I wasn't in the area. When you have all of that evidence, then you're going to link him with the physical evidence, the DNA, and then you're going to have the clothing. You're going to have all of these things. And then, like you said, you might get a good picture of what type of person he was from, fellow employees. So all of these pieces of the puzzle will come together, and you could put it together and you can present it to a jury at a trial, and hopefully those things will be done and we'll be able to get a conviction on this animal. That's the only word that I could think of that's not dirty to describe him. He's an animal.
Folks, also very important interview. Of course, we spoke about a little bit, interview with his coworkers, his family, his mailman, anyone that has contact with this guy. Let's look at his habits. Where does he get his coffee in the morning? Let's talk to people. What do they think about this guy? All of those things are important in building what we call in the business is the perpology, basically the study of the perp. Let's look in perp backgrounding, it's called, and look at that and his whole resume, not just as a criminal, as a human being, even though it's tough to call this guy a human being. Of course, the search warrant on his home, his computer, a treasure trove of information can be found in his home, maybe evidence of other crimes, maybe stolen property, maybe evidence on his computer of stalking other people. This guy is a real traditional predator. So as I said, a search warrant on his home can recover a treasure trove. Let's interview his family members. Maybe some of his family members are terrified of this guy. Who knows? We don't know until we talk to all those people. Of course, DNA, In this case, he's arrested for a felony. They can take his DNA. All right. The judge can even give an order if because I don't know if till you're convicted they can actually forcibly take it. So they take his DNA. They ask him if they can take it voluntarily. If he refuses, they get an order to compel by the judge. It's easier to use an exemplar to compare against DNA you have as evidentiary DNA than it is to run the DNA against CODIS, which is the combined DNA identification system, which is collected by the FBI. So it's much easier if you can get a live exemplar of his DNA just simply by swabbing the inside of his cheek with a Q-tip and putting it in a paper envelope and then sending it to the lab. That's as easy it is. It's not as intrusive as taking blood or anything like that. So we get an order to compel by the judge to get his DNA so we can make a comparison. Of course, a huge piece of evidence too is the results of the autopsy, which will tell us so many things about this beautiful young girl who lost her life.
Billy, I also want to know, how did he stumble upon this Walmart parking lot at 5:00 in the morning? Was he stalking her? Did he stalk the area? What links him to that Walmart parking lot? And again, from what you just said, speaking to his co-workers, family members, what would put him in that parking lot at that time in the morning? Did he have a previous chance encounter with Naomi? Was he stalking her? That's all very important to find out. Again, it's going to lead to a roadmap of what happened on that morning, how he came upon that parking lot, that Walmart parking lot. Was he there on previous days? The usually video surveillance cameras will go back 30 days or more. So I would be looking for stuff like that. Maybe he had a dry run, a test run previously. Maybe she was a random victim. Maybe other people parked in that parking lot. That's what I'd like to know. How did he stumble upon her at that time in the morning? What was his reason for being there? Maybe he followed her from that gas station that she was at just prior to going to the parking lot where she stopped. It looked like she bought something inside the convenience store part of the gas station. So again, these are things, questions that need to be answered. And I think it would be in the best interest of the investigation and the prosecution to find out those things. So that way you can slam dunk the case. Not only are you going to say he was there on that morning, but we know he followed her, or why he was there, or what had put him there. Did he he worked for a construction company? Did he have business with his employment at that location? How did he, maybe he was at that gas station. That's what I'd be looking for. I'd be checking that video surveillance at that gas station before she went there. You always want to look at the movements of a person, a victim, prior to the incident too. So I would be looking at that. I'd be looking into her movements when she left the home. Was she followed from her home? These are all things that need to be looked at and questioned and asked. These are very, very important things that need to be done. Where was he before he got to that parking lot? Was he at his home, or was he at a bar, or where was he? These are things that his cell phone can answer some of those questions, but I'm sure that the investigation and the investigators are looking into all of that. It's going to be at the prosecution phase at this point, so there's still a lot more work to be done.
Ray Bird, thank you for your comment. Other women coming forward saying they have seen him at Walmart watching people. Phil, I seriously doubt that this was his first time stalking someone in the Walmart parking lot. I think that's probably part of his MO. Good point. He could have been out drinking, and he's, at the end of the night, he's going home alone, and here he is. He goes to this Walmart parking lot to stalk someone and attack someone. I think that's more than likely. Phil, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come right back with this.
Joe Murray, attorney at law. Have you found yourself in a jam? Are you in need of legal counsel in the New York area? Do you need a victim's advocate? Well, Joe Murray is your man. He's not only an experienced trial attorney, he's also a retired 15-year member of the NYPD. He literally knows both sides of the fence. His website is jmurray-law.com. His telephone number is 646-838-1702, or you could email Joe at jmurray-law.com.
The secret to quickly hiring the best police officers before your competition does. With an extremely limited job candidate pool, law enforcement agencies have to quickly identify and hire qualified police officers before another agency does. That's why nearly 70 U.S. agencies have updated their hiring process to include iDetect, a fast, affordable, non-invasive, unbiased, and automated lie detector. It accurately identifies lies by watching the eyes. iDetect also helps solve crimes. CEO Todd Mickelson shared stories about how iDetect is changing the way the world detects deception. Remember, the eyes do not lie. Converus.com, 1-801-331-8840. To email them for information, info@converus.com. You know, this case is so heartbreaking. I mean, I say it as a father, as a former police officer. It just to think that this family has to deal with this young 18-year-old beautiful girl had a whole life ahead of her, and now they're dealing with grieving and burying her or whatever, however they deal with her death now. Just an outrageous situation. We talked about trying to put all the evidence together, and I have no doubt that law enforcement on this case is going to do a fantastic job because it's such an important case. And I know everyone. Oh, there was one thing I wanted to bring up. There was something about the family had gone to report her missing, and as there are procedures in a missing case. If someone's 18 years of age or older and left home voluntarily or just hasn't been seen in 24 hours or more, minus any potentially foul play, and it's worded differently, if they're missing due to some unaccountable or involuntary disappearance, then they're considered missing. But police get people trying to report folks missing all the time, and they turn a lot of them away because maybe they don't know what to say. And one of the things you must say is like, no, she definitely wouldn't do this. There's something very strange that's unaccountable, involuntary disappearance. She would not do this. And then you sort of force them to take the report and get the ball rolling. And so they did complain that the police initially didn't take the missing person report. And that is not uncommon. Whether it's right or not, each case has to be taken on a case-by-case basis. But at some point, they wouldn't have made any difference had they taken the report really early. I'm just telling you that police agencies are inundated with missing persons reports, and many of them are, it's the family worried that someone didn't come home overnight. And I've seen that lots of times on the NYPD also.
Billy, you're making a great point, but I think that once that video surveillance was uncovered, it was really time to start the investigation. 18-year-old kids, and I'm not talking about Naomi specifically, but 18-year-old kids in general, sometimes they'll go out with their friends drinking, they'll lose track of time. And if she was reported probably the next day, that might be the circumstance that the police officers or the agency didn't want to take the report without some other underlying fact or a circumstance that seemed to be suspicious. And once that was established, I think that they got the ball rolling pretty quickly. But I want to make a point about one other thing. The fact that he was seen lurking around his Walmart parking lot, again, like we said, he could have been out drinking or whatever, but he had a lot of things in his favor. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. It's dark out. He could really go with the cover of darkness where he's not going to be sticking out like a sore thumb. If it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and he's lurking around and there's not much happening in that parking lot, then it might, set off some red flags. But of course it was dark and people must congregate there to catch the shuttle bus or whatever it is. So I think that was on his side. One of the other things, I think a big mistake that he made, burying the body probably will help to preserve evidence, because if the body is left out in the open, you have the elements, you have the wildlife that could disturb the body and, compromise evidence. However, if the body is buried, it would actually help to preserve some of the evidence. Let's keep our fingers crossed. I mean, I hate to even discuss this, but we want to slam dunk this guy into a conviction for murder. And let's hope that there is evidence recovered off of her body.
Real with Robo, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Lee Perry, thank you guys all for your $4.99 super chat. I really appreciate you guys helping support us. Someone asked the question, Ya's daughter, if a tip led to the body, does that mean two are involved? No, not necessarily. He may have told somebody, you know, perpetrators love to talk, you know, and he may have told someone and they got a bout of conscience and called the police, you know, maybe someone saw him doing it. Maybe someone saw him dumping the body. So no, it doesn't mean that someone else is involved. I love Labs. He's probably done it several times and not gotten caught. And this time got sloppy, and she had a family that he shouldn't have messed with. Look, I have no doubt that this guy's a predator. He's probably a sex offender also. Jay Simpson, one lady took pictures of this guy in a gray car following her. She called the police while he was following her. This was a week or so before Naomi's kidnapping. Jay Simpson, thank you for that information. I don't know if in fact it's true. I don't know where you actually got it from, but it sounds like it's really good information. And maybe he was on the police's radar. Maybe they knew about this guy. Maybe he was someone that they had been watching, a stalker, you know. Little Miss TT, the brother, Casey Valley, had to ask Walmart for the video. That should have been, the police should have been doing that, you know, and I'm sure they went back and got that video after the fact. But that was if that in fact is true, that her brother Casey was the one to retrieve that video, that was a very smart thing for him to do. And one of the things we talk about, and a good thing all over this country, is that there's video all over the world, and there's video that helps solve these crimes. Thank God. You know, people have spoken about, you know, why wasn't there security in a Walmart parking lot? I don't know if in fact there was or wasn't. Would security have prevented this? Possibly, you know, maybe better lighting in these parking lots. You know, lighting is proven to scare away people, and people, you know, they always say you want to get the truth, shine a light on it. And that's true with crime. A lot of lighting sometimes can prevent crime. So all of these things we're discussing, you know, we are Monday morning quarterbacking because we don't have privy to the investigation or the case folder. However, we know what is being done, what should be done in these major investigations. And I have no doubt that the police and the FBI are going to do an unbelievable forensic investigation into this case.
Couple of things, Billy. One, the tip. The tip, like you said, it could have been anything. It could be someone saw a suspicious vehicle, maybe doing something in an area that's kind of desolated. That could have been the tip. It could have been a dog walker that saw a body and didn't want to get involved, went home, called the police. There's so many possibilities with that. The other thing is with regard to him being a previous offender. I am sure that all the police agencies in that area, the surrounding states, will be looking at cases that are unsolved, trying to link him to those cases. That'll be very important. That point that one of the people in the chat made about there was a woman claiming that she was being followed by a guy, that's going to be very important. I would want to talk to her, get a description of the vehicle, see if you could link him to that vehicle or to that person that he was following or whoever was following that woman. So those are all things that are very, very important. And it sounds like law enforcement has a very good grasp on this case, the situation. If you look at the affidavit before the body was actually identified as hers, the affidavit really spells out a real serious, horrific crime. It talked about the kidnapping for the purpose of sexual activity and murder. So I think that they have a pretty good idea of what went on. That's going to be based on physical evidence. It's going to be based on the video evidence, the electronic evidence. So they have a pretty good idea of what they believe happened. And then once now the body's recovered, like you said, you stated earlier, Billy, they can do a rape kit. They could do a physical examination of that body, and there could be other things that will lead to the suspect. And then we have the vehicle, his vehicle. There could be the transfer of evidence from her to him. He had to get back in his vehicle after he disposed of her body. So if there was some physical evidence that was on his body related to her, whether it be hair, fibers, DNA, if that transferred into the car, that could be very, very telling and very powerful evidence against him. So again, sounds like law enforcement is right on track with this case. All of the things that we've we stated that we would do, things that we would look into if we were on the case. Again, we don't have the case folder in front of us, but our expertise and previous experience, it seems like they're going right down the same road that we would be going down, Billy.
Yeah, absolutely. Jane Darby. There's a video of a gray car. He had been following her. She had police on the phone. He followed her into Lowe's parking lot. The police told her to park. So she parked in Walmart and recorded him. So that previous information, in fact, very well could have helped in this investigation. So, that old saying, if you see something, say something, and not even more than say something. If she in fact recorded this guy, that information may have been used to identify this, when he did strike and commit this crime. I mean, a predator like this doesn't just start one day. He's been doing it for a while, and if that's true, thank you so much for that information. That's amazing. Cracking asses. That guy looks sick and disturbed. I always tell my daughters not to even go into a store by themselves.
Good advice.
One of the things, folks, I just want to talk about it, and we'll hear it a lot in policing and in security, and it's called situational awareness. And always know where you are. If you're in a parking lot and you're going to your car, have your keys in your hand. And the modern day cars have been built with security in mind. So if someone's following you and you open your door, it only unlocks the car door. That was done with security in mind, the car manufacturers, so that someone couldn't, as you open your car, just open the passenger side door or one of the other doors. It's only opening the driver's side door. You get in your car and you lock the car immediately. So think of situational awareness. Think of where you are. And as I said, I have no problem with people carrying weapons to protect themselves, because let's face reality in this world. Liberals will tell you not to carry a weapon. Oh, it could be used against you, but let them use that philosophy. You want to protect your life. You want to protect your loved ones. You carry what you need to carry to protect yourself. And I see all of these progressive ideas that just seem to protect the criminal and not the victim. And we see victims, in my 27 years as a cop, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people with their heads split open, people stabbed, people shot. And then to think that, you're not going to try to defend yourself, that whole thing of don't resist the robber, don't resist the attacker. That's not in my DNA. And, I think that if you do resist, you have a much better chance of surviving than if you become just surrendering to a perp.
Absolutely, Billy. And you brought up such a great point about the modern day cars. I mean, over the last 10, 15 years, the key fob has a panic button on it. If you hit that button, it'll set off the flashes on the car and the horn will beep intermittently. Now, what I do myself, I keep that right next to my bed at night. My keys are right next to my bed. So that way, if God forbid someone's coming in my house, now naturally, I'm protected with my firearm, but I could also hit that panic button. And now if the police are called, they'll see that. It'll draw their attention right to the car. Now, again, if you're in a parking lot and someone's following you, you hit that panic button. It draws attention to the vehicle. What's going on? Everybody's going to turn around. Why is that panic? Why are those flashes and the horn beeping on that car? A lot of times people forget where they park their car and they do it. But again, you want to bring attention to it. Very, very good point, Billy, about that. The cars are, again, like you said, when you hit the key fob once, it only opens the driver's side, doesn't open the other side. You have to hit it a second time. They're programmed with safety in mind. These are little things that you could use. That key fob with that panic button, that's very important. You're coming out of a movie theater, you're coming out of Walmart, you're coming out of Lowe's, or you're going in. Hold it in your hand. It can help you. It could possibly bring attention to it, and somebody might take off instead of trying to abduct you or rob you.
Whitey 22 Songbird. I have set off the car alarm a few times when people have gotten too close.
Absolutely.
Yes, Phil. So yeah, situational awareness. Again, Trish,
Very good point.
Simon, I've had police officers advise groups of women to not carry a weapon, not liberal. Well, they're wrong. I'm going to tell you right now, those police officers are wrong. And I don't know where. Look, when I was, before I went on the police department, I was robbed at gunpoint. And the robbery was going to get out of control. So I decided to take things into my own hands. And I jumped the guy with the gun. And he fired at me 4 times. And my brother got hit in the stomach. But we disarmed him and held him for the police. The point was, I didn't want to take the chance of what he was going to do to me had I not made that decision to defend myself. You know, I'm not leaving my fate in the arms of a in this case, a paroled murderer, you know, and I wasn't going to leave my fate in his arms. So you decide
Billy,
whether
let
you
me
want
make a quick point about that, Billy. You, in that robbery, I don't want to get too detailed, but you were willing, the people that you were with, they were willing to give up the property. And then he decided he was going to tie you guys up or restrain you guys. And that's when you said, so I think that's the point. You took action at the point where it was, listen, if someone sticks a gun in your face and you give up your wallet and they leave or your watch or whatever it is, that's okay. But it gets to the point now where they're going to restrain you, tie you up, and now they're going to take control of your movements. No good. That's the time to act. Absolutely, Billy. Absolutely.
100%. And that's, you're right. Situational awareness. You have to make a determination as to your capabilities, what you're going to do. You know, I always tell the scenario of people walking down the street and a car pulls up and someone points a gun or a knife and says, get in the car. I will tell you 100%, do not get in that car. Run right there. Scream and run. Chances are the guy's just going to take off in the car. He's not going to shoot you because he's going to draw more attention to himself. But that's your chance. You get in that car, everything that happens after that is 100% bad. You know?
Absolutely.
So
listen, I think with regard to weapons, at least a keychain mace. A lot of women, young women, anybody, could be males, it could be women. Everybody should keep that, and it's legal. There's different types of pepper spray and mace and different things. You got to check with your local ordinances to see if it's legal. But a keychain mace, or like Billy said, your keys in your hand. You put them in between your fingers. If someone comes up to attack you, grab you from behind, you can hit them with the keys and you can put a mark on them. There's a lot of self-defense techniques that are out there. There's also self-defense mechanisms, whether it be mace. They have a thing that sprays red dye on the perpetrator. So there's nothing wrong with arming yourself with things like that. If you take a safety course and you want to arm yourself with a firearm legally, I fully endorse that. I'm sure Billy does as well. Check with your local ordinances to see what's legal. And don't be a victim of a predator. Be able to defend yourself. Be, like you said, situational awareness. Don't bury your head in your cell phone. Be aware of what's going on, especially early in the morning, late at night, whatever it is. These are the things that are important. And Bill, I want to make one quick other point about the case that we were on last night, the Met Sanguine case. After that case was in the media, after they made the arrest, they showed the perpetrator's vehicle. That led to a previous case where he had abducted a woman, and she recognized the vehicle. She jumped out of it while it was moving. She wasn't killed, thank God, but she had been abducted, tied up. She jumped out of the vehicle while it was moving. They were able to convict him on that case before they even tried him on the Met Sanguine case. So that was a great case. If anybody that didn't see it last night, we did an episode on that last night with retired Chief Bob Boyce. Again, the media putting it out there, that helped with getting the animal to be charged with the original before Met's case. He was charged with another case, and he got 25 years on that case, as well as what he got on the Met Sanguine case.
John Lem, if they're going to rob you, they're going to do it right then. If they're going to take you somewhere else, they've got other plans for you. Before they take you, it's time to fight. John Lem, 100%. That's what I was trying to say before. You know, folks, maybe I shouldn't have used the word liberal. Maybe it's better using the word progressive, because it seems progressives care more about criminals than they do about crime victims. So maybe I used an incorrect word. But as far as, look, I did 6.5 years in plainclothes anti-crime in New York City, all right? One of the crime capitals of the world back then, all right? I know what I'm talking about, all right? I've seen criminals change their minds just because someone changes the side of the street they're walking on. Or I've seen criminals change their mind if someone just starts yelling, then they go the other way. So whatever your technique is to not be a victim, I'm telling you to do it. And these cops that advise not to carry a weapon, look, they want to be a victim. Ask them what they're carrying off duty. They're carrying a 9 or a 40 caliber, but they want you to be a victim? No, I don't think so. This cop advises people to be ready when something like the eventuality of something like this can happen. I mean, that used to be the old thing. Oh, give them whatever they want. What if you give them whatever they want and they still shoot you, you know? And I'm not saying it like Phil described before. Someone pulls a gun on you and says, give me your money. Give them your damn money.
Right.
And if they take off, fine. If they're not done, that's when you gotta make a decision, you know? If they want to play with you after you gave them their money, no, it's not happening to me, you know? And it's just, this is a crazy world we live in. And, we have politicians, we have progressives that want to take the side of the criminals. And with that being said, you have to protect yourself because law enforcement cannot protect you 24/7. Law enforcement is hampered and handcuffed right now with the job they can do by so much politics. So I'm telling you, you need to protect yourself. Little Miss T, I just do not understand how the judge allowed bail for Troy Driver yesterday when she knew that Naomi had been found. I'm having a hard time seeing justice in that. I don't think he was ever released. I think the bail was offered. And
the fact that it was offered is outrageous. Though,
I find that outrageous also. I do. We spoke about that before.
Yeah.
I find that outrageous too. Frank Marsha, here in Florida, we can carry concealed firearm with a permit. Problem is we have some people here that shouldn't have a driver's license, let alone a gun permit. Frank, I've driven in Florida recently, and I think the cars there are more dangerous than the guns. People in Florida are outrageously crazy drivers. When the speed limit's 65, they're doing 95, and I'm doing 75 and people are flying by me like I'm standing still. I mean, I think that's where they need more enforcement in Florida is in the vehicle and traffic law than speed cameras,
Billy, I got to make a point. My experience over my years in law enforcement, whether it be a robbery, a rape, these predators, they use something called the element of surprise. That's number one. So knowing situational awareness, like you said, knowing what your surroundings are. If you see them before they see you, they're usually going to go find somebody else. That's one. Two, cover of darkness. The cover of darkness gives the perpetrator, the predator, an edge on you. It's dark. He's not going to be noticed so quickly. And then there's other things that they take into when they're going to do these crimes. He may have did dry runs, stalking this parking lot. We have the information that one of the people in the chat put up that he was following another vehicle. So these are the things that they use. So what we have to do in defense of these perpetrators is be aware of our surroundings at all times. If you're in a car, keep your doors locked. You're waiting for a bus or you're waiting for a friend, keep your doors locked. Don't bury your head in your cell phone. If you do look at your cell phone, look up, see what's going on around you, especially at night. One of the other things that they use, if it's raining or if it's snowing, that was one of the times where a lot of robberies would take place because, again, it aids them. They're not going to be, if you're in a rainstorm and you're sitting in a car, you're not going to be able to see out as good as if it was a clear night, even though it's dark. Snow, another thing that it hampers the response by police because if it's slippery and if it's snowing heavily out, it's going to slow down response time. That's one of the advantages they use maybe in a burglary of a bank or something like that. So all of these different things you have to think about it beforehand. Again, keep your eyes open. If you see the perp before he sees you, chances are he may try to find somebody else. I'm not trying to say that, push him onto somebody else, but these are the things you have to protect yourself. Knowledge is power when it comes to protecting yourself from predators. Unfortunately, young Naomi, she was young. We talked about where she came from. She lived in a diplomatic situation, a diplomatic security situation most of her life. So she may not have been so aware of what's going on in the world, but really, really, condolences to her and her family. It's a terrible, terrible case. And we just want to see justice now going forward for the perpetrator.
100%. Folks, we got Lieutenant Pete in the chat, a street crime legend in the NYPD.
Good.
Head on a swivel, went out, face to the door. See you all. 100% Lieutenant Pete. I just don't like when some law enforcement preach to people not to protect themselves. I find that it's coming from another area of law enforcement that I've never been part of. I call them conscientious objectors, and I don't agree with that philosophy. And the one thing is, if you are armed with a weapon, make sure you know how to use it. Make sure you're trained in it. Don't just, start carrying a gun because you can. Make sure you get training in it and you know when and when you can't pull it, when and when you should pull it to defend yourself. And that's a very important thing. Folks, these are the horrendous times that we live in, and this poor 18-year-old girl, God bless her family. God bless her in her memory. God bless her soul. And we want to make sure that the person that did this gets justice and gets the full extent of the law that he's entitled to.
You know what? We're not going to endorse vigilantism, but we are making points that you do have a right to protect yourself. If you, like Billy said, if you know how to use a firearm, you know how to retain a firearm, you know how to safely use a firearm, by all means do so. Maybe there are certain people that shouldn't carry a firearm. However, a simple thing like mace, if it's a teenager, you could buy mace in Lowe's or Home Depot. There's keychain mace that you put on your keychain. You could have that at the ready, and maybe a self-defense course. There's a lot of different courses that male, female can take. If you're grabbed from behind, there's different techniques that you could use. Again, in this case, sitting in a car by yourself, doors locked, cell phone at the ready, car running so that we can get away if someone does approach the car. These are some of the safety tips that we would implore people use. There's really not much else to say about it. It's just unfortunate. The only thing we can do is we can look at this specific case, point things out, and hope to prevent, because there's going to be predators out there in the world, unfortunately. There's going to be other scumbags that'll do stuff like this. But if we learn to protect ourselves and we employ some safety techniques, it's preventable. Again, like you said, Billy, God bless this young lady and her family. I hope she rests in peace, and let's get justice for her.
For sure, folks. Thank you so much for listening today. This is the first time we actually covered this case, and unfortunately, there's going to be more cases like this in the future. It's just too common an event these days, and we, as we said, God bless her family, and God bless Naomi, and may she rest in peace. Folks, thank you so much for listening. This is Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories.
Stay safe, everyone.
One episode